Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a roto-rootered Charles Coulombe.
Roto-rooted. Call Roto-Rooter, that's the name, and away goes trouble down the drain. Roto-Rooter, like that?
Like that.
I know what you're referring to my procedure of this past week.
Right.
Well, polish my buttons and comb my hair. Absolutely. It happened. Well, yes, ladies and gentlemen, I do have a health update for you. Indeed, I do. It was an amazing experience because, here in Austria, unlike the States where they keep you awake and you get to enjoy every special moment of the colonoscopy, here in Austria, they prefer to put you under. And so I was ushered into a sort of a roomette surrounded by curtains with a gurney bed in the center and a chair, and told to disrobe there. So I stuck my clothes on the chair and then went into the next adjoining curtained off area with a gurney bed, got on it, told to lie on my side, which is fine because I'm a side sleeper, and they shoved an IV with anesthesia into my arm. Well, I kept waiting for the procedure to begin. And actually, not to begin, I was waiting to fall asleep. I kept waiting to pass out and waiting and waiting. They left me alone, you see, and I'm just lying there waiting for them to fall asleep, really. And nothing happened. And then the doctor comes back in, mumbles something at me, smiles, and walks out again. And then the nurse comes in and says, "Mr. Coulombe, you can sit up now." And I said, "Well, when are they going to do it?" And she said, "It's already done." I said, "Oh." Then she walked out, and I sat up, and I was in the first roomette. They had changed gurneys, and there were my clothes right next to me on the chair where I'd put them. I like the hapless victims of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I had gone into the time slip, and I was ready to do the time warp again after that. It was pretty peculiar. But I did not do the time warp, which I thought would have been inappropriate at that particular moment. But I did find out something important, and that is my colon and all the places the colonoscopies can gaze at are fine. Absolutely fine. No cancer, no nothing. However, there are 2 more tests because that means that the unpleasant symptoms are being generated by something else somewhere else. And they don't know what or where that might be. But the search will go south. So I'm going to get an MRI on the 23rd, and then another procedure on the 27th. And one of those 2 should identify what the problem is. So keep me in your prayers. But obviously, because whatever it is not tucked way up in the colon, it'll be easier to get to, presuming it's nothing too terrible. So we'll find out. You will be kept informed, not to worry. But in the midst of all that last week, something, and then the various other annoyances one endured, something wonderful and horrible happened at the same time.
What?
Well, I got on Instagram a text from a kid whom I presume, because he says he's underage, is, I don't know, 17, 18, 19, 20, something like that. I don't know. And he told me that he didn't know who to turn to because his father and grandmother are both fallen away Catholics. The grandmother was dying in the hospital. He was there. They had told him that they would not allow a priest. He had tried to get his father, who had fallen away Catholic, to get a priest because he had standing. His father just laughed. And the kid was underage. So he had no standing at all. and he didn't know who to talk to, who to reach out to at all. So he texted me, which, I was in the midst of all this exciting adventures of the past week. And oddly enough, it was a very good thing because it got my mind off everything else. So I suggested a couple things to him. And ladies and gentlemen, do please pay very careful attention to what I'm going to say, because some of it you'll find useful if you're dealing with medical personnel in attempts to either protect the physical or spiritual health of your loved ones trapped in hospitals. He told me that they had said they wouldn't allow a priest to see her. I said, all right, the next person who tells you that, say, oh, I see. Write me a note to that effect and sign it. Almost always when they make these outrageous claims, not just like that, but my personal favorite when my mother was going through this, if you don't sign a DNR, we'll cease treatment. That kind of thing. All you have to do is ask the person to write a note to that effect and sign it. One of two things will happen, usually. The person will either crumble and do what you want, or they'll refer you to a superior to whom you'll make the same request. Oh, I see. I get it. Well, just write me a note to that effect and sign it. And then usually that person will crumble. Because in the wonder world that is modern medical care, whenever they're trying to push something dodgy on you, if you force them to take personal responsibility for it, as in maybe actionable down the line, they won't do it. So generally you can push them to obey the law and do things the way they're supposed to be. Anyhow, so that was my suggestion to him. But as it happened, he didn't have to use it because he met another person, another shift, who was much more helpful to a degree, and said that, okay, we'll call a priest. Well, I said, okay, great, but keep after them. And he did. And eventually they did call and left a message with an answering machine. But of course, in the meantime, the grandmother is getting worse and worse, and they're bringing in more equipment and so on and so forth. Another day goes by. I gave him a list of priests. He told me the area that he was in, and I gave him a couple of suggested a couple of churches that he try. But he ended up going with his parish. It was actually pretty close to the hospital. And a priest did finally show up there from his parish church. He wouldn't, and at this point, the grandmother did not recognize the grandson, at least initially. And the priest did not hear her confession. But he gave her the last rites. He gave her the anointing of the sick, as they say today, which takes care of your sins. And best of all, the grandmother crossed herself and so on. Did everything, obviously she was aware of what was going on. Now, off he went, the priest, I mean. And I told the fellow, or I texted him because I never spoke to him. It was all texting. I told him, I said, well, you can't think of your grandmother as fallen away anymore. She isn't. She's a member of the church, and she'll go out with God's graces. Now, I mention this to you, ladies and gentlemen, not simply because it made me feel good last week that I was able to contribute a bit, nor, more importantly, to praise the bravery of this boy in the face of both his grandmother's previously stated unbelief and his father's derision. No. I mean, he was a brave kid, and I applaud him highly. I may never meet the guy, I may never know who he is, but good on you, bravo. But there's a bigger lesson. I'm very much aware that our demographic are primarily young men between 18 and 35. Now, mind you, I'm very grateful for everybody watching this who are none of those things. So, Grandma Dupree, Oswald's much better grandmother, there in Bodicoke, Louisiana. I love you. Thank you for watching the show. You're great. But Nevertheless, you guys know who you are, and I'm aware by the tenor of a lot of the questions we get that a lot of your parents, grandparents, whatever, are either out of the church, never been in the church, fallen away, whatever, what have you. And I'm also aware that for us older people, taking any kind of advice from younger people is very difficult. Who are you? Huh. I changed your diapers, young man. You really think you're going to come and tell me? You don't know anything about it. I went to Catholic school. Who do you think you are? Ha! Because for one thing, having returned to the faith, you very likely have activated my guilt, because on some level I feel bad about leaving it. You got to make me annoyed. There's no way about that. I mean, mind you, I am Legion. I'm representing my whole generation for you right now. So, and I'm not just your fathers, grandfathers, uncles, and great uncles. I'm also playing your mothers, grandmothers, and great aunts. But all of us together, we won't really appreciate it, by and large. So what does that mean? Who are you to speak to me this way? If my ego would allow me to, I would realize that you're somebody who loves me very much, possibly more than anyone else I've ever known. And the likelihood is I love you more than you can imagine. But that doesn't get in the way of my ego, sadly. So, what's the greatest gift you can give me? It's trying to see that I don't go to hell. If I realized it, that would be the greatest gift I could give you. But for various reasons, I don't know that. Or I won't know it. Or I made myself forget it. Or, whatever the Legion I'm representing have come up with for ourselves. So, you've got to be Johnny on the spot. You've got to be waiting for our failure, for our physical failing. And notice something interesting, that in this most recent occurrence, the grandmother signed the cross and all that, because very often, as Dr. Johnson tells us, when you're to be hung in the morning, it focuses the brain wonderfully. But see, all too often, having created a household full of non-Catholics, there's no one to find me the priest I realize I need. There's no one to do it for me. So you've got to try to do it, kids. And it's something you've got to be aware of. Also, you needn't wait for my deathbed, because who knows, I might get run over by a truck. You could have masses said for me for my conversion. You could donate your rosaries to that cause. Even evening prayers. There's a lot of stuff you could do. As I've said before, you can invite me to mass. If you end up on your own recognizance, arranging for your own confirmation, your own first communion, all that stuff, or your children's, you can invite me. I may or may not go. And if I do go, I may be, the Debbie Downer of the bunch, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you try. Because see, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I don't believe in reincarnation. I really don't. This is it. In the immortal title of the ABC soap opera that I really disliked because it pushed Dark Shadows out of the way, One Life to Live. That's what we got. That's what we've got. Death, judgment, heaven, and hell. Now, none of this is magic. All right. At the end of the day, my salvation really will depend on me. But there are all sorts of things you can do to facilitate it. We don't really know the mechanics of how this works, in the sense that Our Lady says at Fatima, many people go to hell because they have no one to pray for them. Well, that makes sense on one level, but it's difficult to figure out the mechanics of what that really means and how it works. And I'm not going to even try. I just take it as read and do my best along those lines. So we really fell down on the job in passing the faith. Most of us. Some of you, you did get it from us, and that's great. And for those of you who did, great. Those of you who didn't, do not repay us as we paid you. Give us good for evil the way our Lord tells you should. And that will do something else for you. If you have done everything you can to see that we die with the sacraments, when we do die, it will lessen your own sorrow appreciably. I can promise you that. Especially, if you manage to pull a rabbit out of the hat the way this kid did. You'll never feel good about it. Don't get me wrong. It's not, you're not going to be dancing in the ground. The old man's gone. No, but you will know that if I did save my soul, you played a big part in it. And you gave me the best gift that any human being can give another. So, do think about that. And do remember that you have that responsibility. Obviously, we didn't live up to ours. You have to live up to yours. And you will get blessings. You will get graces, I promise. Can't tell you what they are, but you'll get them. So, on that note, I don't want to stick with that, but rather, since we're in the whole death, judgment, funeral stuff and all that, there's one other point I want to move along to, and that is that today, being in real time, the 17th of April, Saturday, I saw the funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip. And I have to say, it was very moving. There were no eulogies, which was a really great thing. Prayers for the repose of his soul, which is appropriate. I know a lot of people have gone after the royals online and so forth since he died in the most vulgar and autistic manner possible. I mean, some of the things I've read. My employer, Don Vincenzo, has a wonderful phrase. You don't have a right to be that stupid. Well, I thought of that a lot this past week when this stuff was coming out. So the Duke is gone. A big part of, for those of us who, you've got to be very old indeed if you can remember a time when the Duke of Edinburgh wasn't a feature of life. Not the biggest deal. I mean, Lord knows he was not Beyonce or Tony Curtis or any of the other fleeting idols of their day. He's just always there, the Duke of Edinburgh. The biggest thing he was known for in England, other than being there, was his jokes, his gaffes, so-called. They weren't gaffes. He had a very funny sense of humor and very pointed, and he knew how to use it. And those are things I will miss. Beyond that, I looked at the Queen, the widow at Windsor, as she is now. And, I have very mixed feelings, as you can imagine. But to lose a husband you've been married to for that long a time, since before she was queen, she married him in 1948. Think about that. That's a long time ago. Even I wasn't alive back then. And now she's alone. So say a prayer for her. Say a prayer for the whole royal family. Oh, yeah, their conversion. Can't forget that. Can't forget that. But say a prayer for Her Majesty and the Prince of Wales and all the rest of them. Don't be haughty, ladies and gentlemen. Never be too haughty to pray for people. even if there are aspects of them you don't like or don't agree with. Unless, of course, you think you're so pure that you could face the judgment seat of God and not worry. If you really feel that way, I'm sorry for you. We tend today to make ourselves judge, juries, and executioners because we're all so pure and wonderful. Well, I hope God sees us as perfect as we see ourselves. If he does, then believe it or not, you and me have nothing to worry about. But if he doesn't see us as perfect as we see ourselves, then there may be rough times ahead. Creative differences, as you might say.
Well, just pragmatic to, even if you do find yourself to be perfect and to be wronged, you pray the Our Father, which, if you're paying attention, actually has some important words. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
No, I can't.
In other words,
I can't take it.
If you're not forgiving those who've wronged you, it's not boding so well for you,
Didn't our Lord say, "Vengeance is thine"?
Maybe. I don't know.
You've been reading one of them new scriptures.
No, vengeance is mine. What's the context of vengeance is mine? Is that Old Testament or is that New Testament?
That's a good question. I feel like a moron.
Yeah, but basically, that means leave the vengeance to God,
Yeah, but you can't mean that. Not when I can take so much better care. Now, mind you, there is a difference between self-defense and vengeance. But self-defense only goes so far as to defend yourself. It should never go beyond that. So, in other words, if I think you're going to shoot me, I may be justified in shooting you. But I should try to shoot your gun hand and not blow you away if I possibly can.
Well, as you say these things, that reminds me of my metaphor of this world that we're in, which is basically The Walking Dead. Because that's what we're dealing with. That the people who are still around, a lot of them are around because they're tough. They're survivalists when it comes to the faith. They've seen everyone else die spiritually because they were soft. And so those who are left, it's a brutal thing. And the challenge is taking chances and doing courageous things like you just said, like shooting the gun hand. In the context of The Walking Dead, that seems ridiculous, but that's what is called for.
Well, if you possibly can. Unless, of course, it's a zombie, but then you wouldn't want to be shooting at the gun head of a zombie anyway. You really wouldn't want to hit the head.
And, the other thing, since I'm here, and this is one of my favorite metaphors, don't be on the guard tower 24/7. You can't live like that on the guard tower 24/7 because you're going to go nuts. You have to take some time off and enjoy the world.
Now, there is a lot to enjoy, ladies and gentlemen. And, another thing that occurred to me, too, over the past week, thinking about what it was like when I was your guys, a lot of you age at my present. In some ways we had it better, in some ways we had it worse. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. The ways that we had it worse were that, unlike yourselves, where, everybody who's watching this now, and you're all over the world, can be in touch with like-minded people from all over the world, literally 24/7 if they want to be. You can learn, you have got access to so much information. You've got all the world's libraries, at least the stuff that's in the public domain, readily accessible to you. If I had had access to a quarter of the information you guys had when I was your age, I would have been very, very happy. And all from the quiet of your room. That's where you had it better. I'll tell you where we had it better. We couldn't get it all from the quiet of our room. We had to go out. We had to go out. We had to meet people. We had to see people who differed from us, with whom we had to get along because there was no choice. If you didn't get along with people, then you didn't have much of a life. And we got out and we saw things and we did things. And one of the things I've noticed from a lot of the interaction I've had online is that for a lot of younger people, that dimension of life doesn't really seem to exist. You know, it doesn't really seem to exist in the sense that everything is online. The games, the entertainment, everything. So my advice, meet some people you don't know online, meet them in the real world. And if you get into arguments over stuff, keep it good-natured, chat, talk. Go out to a public garden. Go to a museum. Do something. Get on out there because there's a lot to be seen. Meet me halfway because, I spent a lot more time online. Well, at least I did until COVID came, than most people my age. So meet me halfway. Spend more time on the outside than most people your age.
Okay. Okay, will that do it for the intro segment?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm so terribly conflicted these days because, all right, I mean, look at it this way. I mean, all right, within the context of post-structuralist discourse, I think that all of us, in one way or another, in one sense or another, are trying to reestablish a sort of commonality that, while being tailored individually to each of our own truths, nevertheless, to some degree, in one manner or another, may have a sort of modality wherein all of us may share, but on our own terms. You see what I'm saying?
Not quite. What's post-structuralist?
Well, you see, in this period that we're living in, now that the whole structuralist revival is over, there is a sense in which an attempt to reconcile form and the irrational is still being pursued in many quarters. And I think that there is a sense, whether or not you agree with this, and I think you might or not, I really think that this pursuit is one of the most exciting things going on today. And I think that it bears a lot of potential for, further exploration along these lines.
What was that? So exploration of form and the irrational? Is that what you said?
Well, yes, because, after all, when you look at what form really means today, as it's been experienced by people whose own life stories, I think, are equally valid, I think that in that sense, everyone really does have to tell their own truth and know their own truth, regardless of whether or not it corresponds or even complies with what society is expecting.
Oh, Charles, I'm so sorry because
What's that?
I just can't imagine the amount of crap you've had to read to become so adept at satirizing that it's so well. To do that so well.
There are portions of my brain that are utter mush.
I can't even imagine.
Oh,
I don't know how you
loudy,
could do
loudy.
that to yourself, honestly.
Well, I'll tell you, it's how I deal with it. It was the sort of thing when you'd be sitting in class hearing this kind of garbage. I don't want to mention Cal State Northridge, but when you would be hearing this sort of stuff, and mind you, I've had to read a lot of it, going forward, as they say. Oh my gosh, mountains of this moronic drivel, utter yap. So how do I deal with it? Do I get angry? Oh no. Oh no. No, I just store it up and toss it back. But I say on occasion I have gotten I've been too good for my own good, in the sense that if I start talking like that at parties, and everybody laughs normally, right? But every now and then I'll get paid back in my own coin, and someone will say, "Yeah, that's really true." It's funny you're saying that, because I feel the same way, in the sense that
Then what happens? Then what happens? Then you're trapped.
Well, then I am trapped, and I pay. I pay.
Wow.
See, this is what comes when you're too smart for your own good, ladies and gentlemen. Oh yeah, and I have paid the price. Absolutely. Oh yes, 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 yes. It.
Okay.
Oh well. Now I've got a question for you.
Yes.
Is productivity up or down this week?
Productivity is absolutely through the roof. We have nationalized so many memes. We've received so many memes this week. From some people, I actually felt that their intention was to destroy Tumblr House by flooding our servers with emails of memes. We've received so many. So I want to tell everyone thank you so much, especially for this week.
They were a really, really good crop. We can't show all of them, ladies and gentlemen, but before the show, Don Vincenzo showed me each and every one of them. And I got to tell you, none of them were bad.
Right.
I mean, they were all really funny.
Yeah, we enjoyed every single one. Thank you, everyone, for sending them in. I mean, I don't know how many we received in total. It's probably, I don't know, 30 or so.
7.
What?
Yeah, I was going to say 30 to 40 to 70, a lot.
Yeah.
Because we were sitting there, I mean, it took us an hour or so to go through them, and they were really great.
Yeah. So, Charles effectively chose the, I want to say, maybe the 5 or 6 best. So we're gonna go through them right now. So,
and it was hard. You guys did not make it easy on me this week.
Right. Okay, let's go through them. I have them in
nationalize the memes of production. I had to say that
for the common good.
Yeah.
So I unfortunately didn't arrange them in any particular order. So we'll just go through them one by one here. So the first one is from Jason on Twitter. Let's see here. No, Your Eminence, I'm not an actor, and no CODs. Nighty night to you too.
That is so cruel.
You're vicious, Jason. That's savage. All right. Spanish Galleon sent us several memes. Here's our cream of the crop from his. All right. I can't even read this. All right. This pains me to read this, but I'm going to read it. When Mr. Cacciatore isn't on Sullivan Street across from the medical center.
Oh, good old Sergeant O'Leary.
I think that's Charles's favorite. I mean, that just hits a sweet spot, you know?
It really does. It really does. It makes you want to buy a house in Hackensack.
All right.
One of these days we're going to move out of the city. Vinny, you're going to see. We're going to get ourselves a house in Jersey. We'll get out of here. No more of this rat race.
All right.
Yeah.
Next one is from Credidimus. He gave some context for this one. He says, celebrated author and historian Charles Coulombe listens to his favorite podcast through a telephone from his cell in the mental hygiene facility. Hey, let's see the picture for this. Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with the bewhiskered Oswald Dupree.
See, this is what they call in Freudian psychology, I think, a wish fulfillment dream. Vinny wishes he could do this with Oswald, but it ain't happening. Because you know what? That guy could not sit still in front of a camera to save his life. He really couldn't. He'd have to be up on the floor, you know. Yeah, that's great.
All right. Martin von Golan sent in a bunch of memes. Here's the cream of the crop from him. And he keeps, and he keeps serving mackerel in the cafeteria. And you're talking to Batman and Robin. Don't worry, citizen. That villainous Don Franchini will be brought to justice.
And listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever had some of that mackerel on the Friday, you know justice is needed here.
That does my heart good. I'm nostalgic over the mackerel.
Yeah, you really? You haven't had it since you left the mailroom.
Those were the days. All right.
Sure.
And so James Noel Ward sent us like a dozen memes. Here is cream of the crop from him, especially for Charles. Reporter from Variety, you say, no, I don't think Ricky the Movie 2 is greenlit.
It's probably not.
What is that all about?
Well, I have a very good friend in Australia. Shout out to Liam Firmaget in Melbourne, who did a mockumentary called Ricky the Movie about a non-existent Australian rock star. So, I played myself, or a version of myself, in it as a talking head who ends up not being nearly so bright as he thinks he is. I'm Dr. Charles K. Coulombe or something, and I'm going on about, my experiences with the star, mistakes were made and this and that, usual drivel. And then the interviewer says, Dr. Coulombe, what exactly is your doctorate in? Home economics. Then they cut.
Wow.
So no, I'm pretty sure Ricky 2 is not going to be greenlit. He does, but he did go on to do several other documentaries, including one that's won a lot of awards about I can't think of her name, Italian chick from New York, Susie Q. What she was she played Fonz's girlfriend in Happy Days, and then she became a rock singer. Even though she's an Italian American, she's much better known in the British Commonwealth than she is in the States.
All right, moving on. We actually have one more. We have one more meme from Martin von Golan. This must be a really good one. Let's see. Oh yeah. Do not look behind. Do not look now, Mr. Clone, but I am right behind you. And it shows
shows the back of my head. I think it's kind of an oblique homage to David Lynch in is it Lost Highway or Laurel Canyon? One of those films. Where the fellow talks to this weird guy in a bar, and he hands him his cell phone. He says, I'm at your house right now. And he calls his house, and the guy answers. I mean, it's really weird. So,
okay.
David Lynch does weird. You may not have realized that, but it's true.
I know that. Okay, so Jason, Spanish Galleon, Credidimus, Martin von Golan, James Noel, congratulations. Contact me through the Tumblr House website, and I'll give you a list of books. If you're in the United States, I think James is in France, actually.
Yeah, so he gets cheesed out.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But if you're in the United States, I'll give you a big old choice of books. So
And
thank you.
I should point out that the reason why all of you have won is because here at Tumbler House, we don't believe in forcing people into the traditional win-lose hierarchy. We're much more about rewarding everyone just for being who they are.
Hmm.
We don't want anyone to feel better or worse, you see.
Yeah, that's how we do it.
But that's not all the memes, though. There are two more.
There are
They're
two more.
unrelated to the contest.
Yeah, not contest, but so good. We had to show them. First one's from Brian Koch, who's been a very long time patron, huge fan, super fan. I plucked it from his Facebook actually. Thought for today: when you're dead, you don't know you're dead. The pain is only felt by others. The same thing happens when you're stupid. Wow.
Truer words was never spoke.
That's pretty good. And so this next one from Facebook, I plucked from your profile. And you reshared it. All right. The longer this quarantine goes, the more I think Jack from The Shining actually held it together quite well.
Yes, indeed. In fact, I myself have Lloyd here doing my coffee and tea. Have another cup of coffee, Mr. Coulomb. You'll feel a lot better. Oh, God bless you, Lloyd. You know, you're one of the greats.
I could definitely see that, and I could definitely see you like in that, I don't know what you'd call it, but you basically become a part of the house at the end.
Yeah, I have to tell you, there are several places I've been to that I've felt that way, without a doubt.
Mm.
And I told you about my brother's joke about our cousin Albert at the bank, didn't I?
Maybe.
The Federal Reserve banknote.
Let's hear it.
Well, you know, I have an interest in old U.S. currency, gold certificates, silver certificates, U.S. notes, etc. Today everything's called a Federal Reserve note, and you've got the little green seal. But there used to be, even when I was a kid, you still had silver certificates and United States notes. Silver certificates, theoretically they were different. In the end, they were all the same. But the Federal Reserve note could be redeemed in lawful money back in the days when that existed at any Federal Reserve bank. Silver certificate could be redeemed for silver. And the U.S. note, I forget precisely what the story was with that, but it was a separate deal. Before my time, you had the gold certificates and the national banknotes. Gold certificates, of course, were all withdrawn by Franklin Roosevelt. But then you had a very strange kind of note that didn't exist for very long. It was called a Federal Reserve banknote. And what made it different from the Federal Reserve note is that where Federal Reserve notes could be redeemed at any Federal Reserve bank, the Federal Reserve banknote could only be redeemed at the Federal Reserve Bank that had issued it. So like today, if you look at the money in your pocket, you see the little letter on the front. That letter tells you what bank issued it, what Federal Reserve Bank issued it.
Like L.
All right. Look closely around it, and it should tell you which bank it came from.
Bank of San Francisco.
There you go.
California.
That's where it came from.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, but you could redeem that, presuming there was legal money to redeem it in, which there isn't. But if there were, you could redeem it at any Federal Reserve bank across the country.
Okay.
But a Federal Reserve banknote issued from San Francisco could only be redeemed in San Francisco and nowhere else.
Ah, got it.
It circulated like regular money, but it was different.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't exist all that long. Back in the late 20s, I guess, our paper money used to be very big, and they cut it down to the current size, I think, in the late 20s. And from then until FDR's time, so we're maybe 5 or 6 years tops. And I could be wrong, I'm sure. Given the wide breadth of knowledge of different members of our audience, I'm sure if I'm wrong, somebody will point it out. But as I understand it, they didn't exist all that long. Now, I had never seen one. And remember, they're from the late 20s, early 30s. So and they're fairly rare. I had seen pictures, and I knew what I was looking at, but I'd never seen one. So one day, my cousin Albert comes home, and he knows of my interest in this kind of money. He had been to the bank, and they were looking at, he was being given money, and she reaches around the till and pulls out, literally, a $50 bill, but it's a Federal Reserve banknote. And it looks weird.
Yeah.
She looks at it. She says, well, this isn't counterfeit. It's real, but I don't know if you'd want it. Well, Albert, always on the lookout for goodies that he thinks I'd like. Oh, yes, I'll take it. Don't you fret. So he got it. He brought it home to me. And I was really, really thrilled because I knew exactly what it was. And I explained it to him. He hadn't known what they were, but he knew that it was something that I'd be interested in. So I told him all about it. Well, then my brother Andre comes over, and I said, I got something to show you. And I pulled it out, and he knew what it was. And again, had never actually seen one. He was quite excited. He said, where did you get this? I said, Albert got it from the bank. And he goes, who gave it to him? Lloyd the teller? It's a long, drawn-out thing to explain it, but you can just see Albert goes in there. There's the guy with the green visor, Hello, Mr. Audette. How you doing today? Would you like some silver certificates? Gold certificates? No, I think I just deal with Federal Reserve notes today, Lloyd. Well, all right, but you wouldn't mind a Federal Reserve banknote as well, would you?
It's weird.
Well, you know how it is in my family. We're partly here, partly not. In a nice way.
What did Hunter Thompson say about the weird?
When the going gets weird, the weird turn pro.
There you go.
It's the story of my career. You realize that in saner times, I would have been just another comic on the Sunset Strip. And that would have been it.
Yeah.
Sort of like Shickie Green or Henny Youngman, but without the creativity.
All right. Ready for the questions, Charles? We're only about 50 minutes into the episode.
Well, this is the kind of question, though, that, performers such as myself always ask ourselves. Where do I go from here? Do I go for a series? Should I be more of, I don't know, a hand model? Where are we going with this? You know what I'm saying? This is... All right.
I generally go forward.
You're my producer. I respect your judgment. If you feel that right now the best thing for my career is to sit here and answer questions, if you are emotionally invested in this, you know what? I'm speaking to your truth with this. I'll go with it.
Wait, emotional truth?
Yeah, your emotional truth.
Okay, my emotional truth says proceed.
This is what I'm saying, and I want to go. I want to speak to your emotional truth. I want you to feel that your emotions are not wasted. They're not minimized. They're important to all of us, not just to me. I think to our audience. I think to all of the employees at Tumbler House Tower. I think that all of us are invested basically in the truth of your emotional feelings, and I think that all of us really support you in being who you are as you are.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
All right, enough of the falderall. Let's get some questions going here. What's going on? I don't know. Things crazy. Who are you people? Get off my lawn. Damn kids always playing on. Oh, sorry. Wrong persona. Never mind.
Yeah, you just morphed into Clint Eastwood there. All right.
They're not your brothers, and I don't blame them.
All right. Question from someone who has a moniker. Who is like God?
Well, that's what St. Michael wanted to know.
Yep.
Yep.
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for the show. It makes me look forward to Mondays. I have a few questions that I hope you'll take the time to answer. Thank you.
Do our best.
What's the history of priests having a scheduled day off each week? In our diocese, this is the norm, and we're told that priests should get a day off, like lay people get days off from their jobs, and that priests don't get Sundays off from work because they're offering Mass. Something about this makes me cringe a bit. I just assumed that being a priest is a vocation, more so than an employment, and I never considered offering the Mass to be work. Parents and spouses don't have scheduled days off from their children and spouses.
Well, there are a couple of different things going on at once. One of them is that in days gone by, when there were a lot more priests in most places, the level of work wasn't that per priest wasn't as great as it has become. I mean, when you consider that in a large urban parish you might have 5 or 6 priests in the rectory, that's a fairly decent contingent. Although even then, priests would usually get a day off. Although I don't think it would be what's the word? When I say a day off, I don't mean they didn't say Mass, but I mean you always had the morning Mass. And that's one reason, incidentally, why you had side altars in churches, because prior to Vatican II, every priest had to say his own Mass every morning. And usually they would stagger them if they could, but sometimes they couldn't. So you'd have 2 or 3 different priests offering Masses at 2 or 3 different side altars. It was a big church and so on. Anyway, but beyond that, they usually would get a period of recreation the same way you do in a monastery, because you got to unstring the bows sometime. You can't constantly be working. Just like, mom and dad will get a babysitter to go out. But in terms of that's all on the one hand. On the other hand, it also has to be admitted that the corporate mentality very much entered the church, the way it entered the military, and has had equally bad results, because the church, like the military, is not intended to be a for-profit organization. I mean, and it's not intended to be about career advancement and that kind of thing. It has a greater goal than a business is supposed to have. So when you attempt to put the corporate mentality into either the army or the church, you tend to have suboptimal results, as they say.
You know what's ironic as you say that? You talk about a corporate mentality. Perhaps the church could benefit if they actually really did have a corporate mentality. Let's say, because in a corporate mentality, what's the most basic thing you're tracking? You're tracking sales.
Yeah.
So what do? You do initiatives to track sales, whatever, and, that's the all-important thing. Are we tracking church attendance? Are we tracking revenue? Do we care? Do we even care if churches are going out of business? Do we ask ourselves, what did we do wrong? See, to me, that's corporate mentality.
Let me put it this way. That's the good part.
Yeah, that's the good part. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the good part, see, it's a funny thing. Whenever you try to graft onto something that's basically alien to it, usually it's not the good part that gets grafted on. Everything that you think about is the bad side of corporate. The bureaucratic mentality, the brown nosing, not that happens at the Templar House Tower, of course. I would never say that, boss, ever. But all the bad stuff that you associate with corporate mentality is what they do. The good part, no. And contrariwise, I mean, you can reverse the thing. You take a corporation which really exists only to make money, and you make it woke, and you see that it retains the worst elements of the corporate mentality and loses the good part.
Yeah.
As I say, when you try to graft onto something a way of doing things or a manner of an ethos that's alien to it, you inevitably get the worst of both.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember when my mom told me that once upon a time the church used to track where vocations were generated.
Yep.
You know, like from what parish, where are the priests coming from? And
Yep.
I guess we pray to have more priests, but at the same time, we don't seem to really want or know how to do that.
Well, the reasons for that, I mean, what was one of the major sources of vocations?
Where?
Altar boys.
Yeah.
However, when you have altar girls, very quickly you will not have altar boys. So guess what? And it, see, what people don't realize is that the ages that you're an altar boy, basically 7 to 12, I suppose, 7 to 13, something like that. Those are the ages when the male psyche is forming itself. And at that age, boys don't want anything to do with girls. And if you want them to hate something, make sure they think it's girly. And that'll have nothing to do with it. So what do you present in most parishes? What do you present to a young man who, a young lad who is a potential vocation? Well, the only quasi-masculine figure in the sanctuary, with the altar girls and the Eucharistic ministerettes presided over by Susan, is the priest himself. What red-blooded American boy would want anything to do with that? How many vocations have been literally strangled in the cradle because of altar girls? I don't suppose anyone wants to answer that question.
Yeah, I was an altar boy when altar girls were introduced, actually.
How long did you stay with it?
1997. I didn't stay with it. I quit immediately, and I was crying. I remember what the sister said to me, too. She said, everybody's doing it. I remember she said that. I thought that was such a pathetic reason. That's a sad thing.
Glad I was able to help you walk down memory lane, boss.
It's a sad thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, actually, criminal. Sad is when you get hit by lightning. Criminal is when I run you over. And it's not as though the folks in charge are that stupid. Or maybe they are. I don't know. Anyway, let's go on to the next question.
Yeah. How do we make portions of Nostra Aetate fit with Catholicism, specifically what is said about Hinduism and Buddhism in Part 2?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Just for fun, because believe it or not, Nostra Aetate is not something I sit around thinking about. I mean, up in...
Do they call them part of the people of God?
Yeah, Nostra Aetate, it says here, Part 2. It says, from ancient times down to the present, there is found among various peoples a certain perception of that hidden power which hovers over the course of things and over the events of human history. At times, some indeed have come to the recognition of a supreme being or even of a father. This perception or recognition penetrates their lives with a profound religious sense. Well, there are two things going on. One, you can certainly come to a belief in God of a sort, a God, a supreme being, or even a father, through the use of pure reason. And also there is what was called the original revelation given our first parents to Adam and Eve. And bits and pieces of it have survived in basically fragmentary form amongst the different peoples of the world. But none of them pure and none of them salvific, except among the Jews. Religions, however, that are bound up with an advanced culture have struggled to answer the same questions by means of more refined concepts in a more developed language. Thus, in Hinduism, men contemplate the divine mystery and express it through an inexhaustible abundance of myths and through searching philosophical inquiry. Well, that's true. They seek freedom from the anguish of our human condition, either through ascetical practices or profound meditation, or a flight to God with love and trust. Yeah, sure, okay. Again, Buddhism in its various forms realizes the radical insufficiency of this changeable world. It teaches a way by which men, in a devout and confident spirit, may be able either to acquire the state of perfect liberation or attain by their own efforts or through higher help supreme illumination. Likewise, other religions, found everywhere, try to counter the restlessness of the human heart, each in its own manner, by proposing ways comprising teachings, rules of life, and sacred rites. The Catholic Church rejects nothing that is true and holy in these religions. She regards with sincere reverence those ways of conduct in life, those precepts and teachings which, though differing in many aspects of the ones she holds and sets forth, nonetheless often reflect a ray of that truth which enlightens all men. Indeed, she proclaims and ever must proclaim Christ the way, the truth, and the life, in whom men may find the fullness of religious life, in whom God has reconciled all things to himself. The Church therefore exhorts her sons that through dialogue and collaboration with the followers of other religions, carried out with prudence and love and a witness to the Christian faith and life, they recognize, preserve, and promote the good things, spiritual and moral, as well as the socio-cultural values found among these men.
So it sounds like it's saying that they're good to the extent that they're true.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make an analysis of what percentage is true and what percentage is not true.
It sure doesn't. And we could take it a step further, however, and that is that what they see as good in those religions should be used as a preparatio evangelium, just as Greek philosophy was. As we see with the Chinese rites and the Malabar rites in China and India. So the Catholic way to look at all this stuff is to see in what has been singled out as stepping stones to evangelization. The problem, of course, is that you could just as easily see in it that it's okay where they are. Above all, we should not think that these fragments of the truth are in and of themselves salvific. They are, the fullness of truth is found only in the Catholic Church, and that fullness is necessary for salvation. So what do? Well, it's like with anything else. When you're dealing with rationalists, you start with the fact that the Church invented what we consider Western rational thought. Pope Benedict XVI was big on that. If you start with real mystical types, well, then you take them to the sacraments. And you take them to the experiences of our saints and so forth, like St. John of the Cross and St. Teresa of Avila, and the miraculous aspect of our faith. If they're Bible Christians, you take them to the fact that the Church invented the Bible.
Speaking of that, next question is, what book would you recommend that someone give to a Protestant or perhaps a lukewarm Catholic that is expressing some interest in Catholicism?
Orthodoxy, as G.K. Chesterton. It's far from sufficient in itself, but it gives people, I think, a feeling for the excitement that is Catholicism, for the reality that is easy to miss, especially if you look at the Catholic world as it appears to be. And why do I say as it appears to be? Well, something we tend to forget in our various quarrels and our annoyances and our everyday fights and trads versus moderns and all the rest of it. We tend to forget that the Catholic faith is simply true, and that Christ really does come down on countless altars across the globe every day. And that if you're in a state of grace, having been prepared by absolution, you can receive him every day. I mean, stop and think about what that means. That's amazing. The world is thereby transformed from a dull, stupid place inhabited by dull and stupid people to an exciting, extraordinary place inhabited by dull and stupid people. Anyway, Uh, but it completely changes the nature of what we think we see. And for that matter, it changes the nature of the church, which instead of being a sort of strange asylum that primarily is busy with arcane quarrels over nothing comprehensible, is instead the very place from which the way, the truth, and the life are generated into the world at large, and other than which there is nothing.
Right. Question from Boethius.
You know, if it were the original Boethius asking questions online, I am afraid that the time slip I described earlier would have been total.
Yeah, we sell his book, Consolation of Philosophy, if I remember correctly.
That is correctly it. And yes, it is sold.
All right. He says, I have a serious question. I work...
You're funny. Maybe you'll get a serious answer. You never know. Could happen. Lightning strikes twice.
I work as a cashier, and I recently found out the store I work for sells contraceptives. This is my only means of income currently. What should I do?
I would keep working. Otherwise, if you don't work, you'll have to go on welfare. I don't know any store in the United States that doesn't sell contraceptives. Well, I mean, not Catholic bookstores, but I mean, if you go to any drugstore, the supermarkets, I think, even sell them.
Everybody's doing it.
Have you heard?
I'm trying to point out that while that's true, I feel like that's insufficient on its own.
Well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You know, if you're going to be working as a cashier in that business, that's what you're stuck with.
I guess perhaps it's a matter of, I mean, is he complicit? Right? I mean, is he complicit in something inherently sinful? Right? I mean,
it's a tough call.
I mean, he's not selling contraceptives.
No, he's just taking money for them, and he's not even taking it for himself, actually.
I mean, but you know, see, this is a very tough thing. First and foremost, please ask your confessor. You know.
Yeah, this will shock you, but neither of us are behind the screen.
Because the question of what people are complicit in seems very complicated. Like, you could extend that thought and say, well, if I buy from Amazon, that's sinful. I don't think anyone. I don't think there's any church resource to turn to such matters too. You know, I mean, it can get so complex, these things. Really, it does. Really.
Well,
so
let's move along. What else we got?
Yeah. So, ask your confessor. It's beyond our pay grade.
Ask your confessor and be sure to shop for Tumbler House books at Tumbler House.
Well done, Charles.
Act now while supplies last. Operators are standing by.
Limited time offer. But wait, there's more. Oh, sorry, no CODs.
Sorry, no CODs.
Void were prohibited. But wait, there's more. Send in a book review. Get $5 off immediately. You'll get a coupon code in your email. Enter it in at checkout.
Order $25 or more.
$25 or more, get free shipping and handling.
See?
There you go. Okay.
Gosh, you know, I never get tired of it. It's so cheesy, and I never get tired of that stuff. Oh, well.
Yeah.
What else we got?
Be the first on your block.
Order now and you get...
Yeah. All right. I think that's before my time, though. The be first on your block. I think that's like... I don't know if that happened in the 90s.
Probably not. You know, you got to remember that my time was very much the aftermath of the 50s,
Yeah.
where conformity was a big deal. So be the first on your block.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
That
that's
was
when.
very exciting. Order now, and you get this whatever.
Oh
This
man.
rock.
You get
Order
this
now.
rock.
Order now, and you get this rock.
Well, let me ask you a question. So, when did the pet rock happen, and was it really a big thing?
Well, yes and no. It happened in the 70s, like all stupid stuff. And maybe it lasted for a year, 2 years tops.
I mean, so it was just a normal rock. I mean, a nondescript rock,
Yeah.
or were they sold at stores, like at markets?
Sure.
They just had rocks.
Yeah. Well, they had. I mean, they had stands and things like that.
How do you brand that though? You know what I mean? Like, how do you protect that brand?
You know, I've got to make a terrible admission to you. I never actually bought one.
Well, I know that, but just like, okay.
I don't know. I do know that the Unitarians came up with a burial service for the pet rocks.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
Well, I mean, what if your pet rock died? Yeah, so you didn't even think about that.
Rocks don't live.
Do you hear yourself?
I'm sorry, Charles. I'm sorry. Okay, rocks live.
You should be.
Okay.
You should be. You know what you are? You know what you are? You're an asparacist.
What?
You're an asparacist.
What is that?
You place things that breathe over things that don't.
Oh.
I mean, for you, human beings, animals, and vegetables are more important than rocks. Just because, you know, they breathe. They're alive. Yeah, right. Okay, sure. You don't care about what goes on at quarries and rock piles. All over the world, all over our great country, even as we speak, tunnels are being blasted through cliffs. Yeah, dams are being built.
That's actually true. I mean, like you're actually representing a group of people, because I am a gold prospector too, and that was a thing because it's the
oh my,
the runoff. Yeah.
Not just runoff. You realize that to extract gold ore, you have got to drive your nasty little pickaxes into Mother Earth.
Well, I mean, if you're small time in it, if you're doing it correctly, you're doing it on a much bigger scale.
Oh, well, okay, so that's like genocide. Fine.
Rock genocide, yeah.
Yeah. Here you had these happy little gold veins living in Mother Earth's crust as they were designed to do, just being themselves. And along comes a breather, you know, who wants to get the gold. Yeah, oh yeah, sure.
And
no, that's fine.
And you actually left out like the super serious topic in your satire of the oil in Alaska, right? And
well, see, that's different. That's liquid. I'm not really a paid advocate for them.
You just defend rocks.
Yeah. I am speaking here on behalf of the. I am speaking here on behalf of the igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary American communities. For too long, they have been exploited, used, and objectified by an uncaring band of aspiranticists who insist that lives that do not breathe are without any value whatsoever. Ladies and gentlemen, this cannot go on. Who are we as a people? How can we possibly face future generations with this injustice that is woven into the very fabric of our nation? Look at any major governmental building in this great land of ours, and what is it built of? Granite, marble. Yeah. ripped out of the hillsides, shaped and smashed into something totally alien to it, and turned into what? Into something that just serves man. Well, let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. This has got to stop. The madness has got to end. Let rocks be rock. This was a paid announcement by the American Civil Rights Rock Council. You really don't think rocks deserve civil rights, do you?
I don't really recognize a rock's right to live.
See, this is what I'm talking about. But you know what's something, smart guy? One of these days, we're going to organize the Million Rock Roll on Washington. Boulders, fragments, pebbles, stones, the whole bunch. We're going to descend on Washington in an avalanche of liberation.
And we're going to descend on you, me and our Paisan brethren with clubs, and we are going to break that up.
Oh, I'll bet you would, too. And you know something? You Italians are the worst. Look at what you've done to our marble brothers in places like Carrara. Yeah, uh-huh. Oh, Carrara marble. Oh, that's nice. Why don't you say passenger pigeon feathers?
What?
Yeah, you know, the extinct bird that people like you destroyed in the 19th century.
I love pigeons.
Yeah, not passenger pigeons. Your kind killed them all.
They should have been hardier.
They were delicious. I mean, let me rephrase. All right, fine. So you've exposed the whole rock civil rights movement.
Yes, I have. So, closed issue.
Jeez.
Closing the book on that one.
Fine, I don't care. Mr. Simon Legree of the rock world.
All right.
Look at the Tubman House Tower itself. It's a monument to rock oppression and enslavement. The very stones of which your building is made up of, they've got no rights, no freedom. They've just got to sit there.
Are you done? Are you done moaning and groaning? You know, what did I say before? Several months ago. It seems like the main value of a human is their ability to coerce somebody. You know? Yeah. It's like well, you know, I don't have any value unless I can make everyone do what I want everyone else to do.
Correct. There's no real freedom. The real freedom is the freedom to oppress others. They're very true. And if you can't oppress others, if you can't bend them to your will, you're not free. No, very true.
All right. Very good, Charles. I like that one. All right.
Well, it's just from observation of the modern world, ladies and gentlemen. It's what we live under. Make sure you've got your masks on, by the way.
All right. Question from Robert.
Yes, Robert.
Greetings, gentlemen. I have been asking a lot of political questions and have brought up several about the Roman Empire. I would like to know Charles's opinion on the ancient Roman state in general. What are his thoughts on Rome's journey from kingdom to oligarchic republic to populist dictatorships to military juntas and finally to autocracy? What makes Rome unique in political history and how come it has influenced law and society today, even monarchical societies? At first glance, it seems to me that the contractual culture of Rome made it what it is, but I know that they are not like modern social contract theorists. So what makes Rome Rome? And a postscript. If you still have time, I would also like to know what Charles's opinion on Rome is. Is it positive or negative? Is it still crucial to study it to help rebuild the West, etc.?
Well, okay. I've been to Rome several times. It's a wonderful place. I've been to Utica and Syracuse too, and they're all very nice. Central New York, New York State, I haven't spent that much time in. But the times I've been to Rome have been. Oh,
He's not referring to Rome, New York.
Oh,
yeah.
The other one.
The other Rome. Yeah, it's easy. I'm sorry. I should have specified. It's so easy to mix up, Charles. Rome in Italy. Yeah.
Okay, that's different because Rome, New York is not like Rome, Italy.
Yeah.
They're very different. All right, Rome, Italy. Well, firstly, one thing you've got to bear in mind is that the Roman Empire, per se, was in a sense not simply the culmination of its own history, but the culmination of what you might call the concept of imperium, of empire. The first modern empire, as we could refer to it as, was the Persian Empire. You know, the people that they fought against in the movie about the Spartans. You know, although the Persian king wasn't really this huge tranny with his, anyway. Um, but the Persian Empire, although we think of it very badly because our views of it are, of course, informed by the Greeks who fought it, which, they couldn't be expected to like it. It actually was kind of a revolutionary setup because before, empires basically tried to make everybody like themselves. What the Persians excelled at were basically keeping their various subject peoples' identities and rulerships intact and making them part of the greater Persian state. This was a real breakthrough in terms of human governance. When the Persian Empire was overthrown by Alexander the Great, he took it a step further in the sense that he established an empire that on Persian foundations engrafted Greek culture and philosophy. This was essential, oddly enough, to Rome because Alexander improved upon what the Persians had done. Then he died, and his empire broke up initially into three major parts. Egypt was under the Ptolemies, who later gave us Cleopatra. Syria, Mesopotamia, Persia, and all that were under the Seleucids, who figure in the books of Maccabees in the Bible. And then the Antigonids got the short end of the stick. They got Macedonia and Greece. While all that was going on, you had those three states. The Roman Republic was developing, and their great enemy, Carthage. As you referred to earlier, of course, Rome starts out as a little kingdom, becomes a bigger republic, and then that republic defeats Carthage for control of the Western Mediterranean, and then eventually absorbs all three of the successor states of Alexander. But by this time, the Persians have reemerged, and Persia is once again an independent empire that Rome never succeeds conquering. Nevertheless, Rome ends up with a unified empire from Syria to Britain. Now, part of the reason why this empire succeeded for so long is because of the imperial foundation I've spoken of. They adopted it. They learned how to co-opt local aristocracies and make them part of the Roman order. It also, however, involved Roman law, Roman administration, which was superior. And so much so that the subject peoples very often abandon their own customs entirely to become Romans. And this was taking it a step further from what Alexander's people had, or from what the Persians had. Now, the thing was that the expansion made the old Roman Republic untenable. It simply could not serve as an adequate governing machinery. And so, in a sense, the emergence of the autocracy was inevitable. But then something happened. And that something was our Lord Jesus Christ. He came to Palestine at precisely the best time for his message to be spread from Syria to Britain relatively easily. Sure enough, the apostles went out all over the Roman Empire and into Persia and Ethiopia and other places. Well, I've said before, I'll say it again. Our Lord established his kingdom in the church when he united the Davidic kingship with the communion of the church at the Last Supper. It spread throughout the Roman Empire, but then Theodosius the Great, in 280, the Edict of Thessalonica, fused the Roman Empire with the faith, and in a sense spiritualized the empire, so that even when later it ceased to exist politically to a great degree, the vast majority of Catholics, East and West, still believe themselves to be part of that empire, although it was no longer really tangible. But its law, its language, its ethos, all lived on, closely connected with the church. And what's interesting, the empire fell in the West in 476. The papacy revived it in the West with the crowning of Charlemagne in 800. The Byzantines didn't like that very much. They were definitely the lineal descendants of the Eastern Roman Empire. But here's an interesting point of fact. Not only was the last Eastern emperor a Catholic when he died in 1453 in the fall of Constantinople, but in a very real sense, the Pope of the time, a few years later, in marrying that last emperor's niece to the first Tsar of Russia, was as responsible for Russia claiming to be the third Rome and the successor of Byzantium, as his predecessor was responsible for Charlemagne claiming to be the heir to the empire in the West. And that's not something Russians, I think, would like to sit around thinking about. But it's true. Without the Pope of the day, Rome would have no claim to be the third Rome. So, what am I saying with all this? The Roman idea became intimately fused with the idea of the church, Catholic and Orthodox. And this is why the symbol of the double eagle became the symbol wherever any organization or group, whatever, made any claim to connection with Rome. So why is it different from all else? It's because in a very real sense, all Christendom remains a part of the empire in a sort of strange spiritual way, a disembodied way. It will always live on as the temporal side of Christendom, the way the church is the strictly speaking religious side. And if as and when Christendom re-expresses itself in a temporal manner, it will somehow or other claim, I'm convinced, it will claim continuity of some sort with the empire.
All right. Question from Nicholas.
Yep.
Hello, gentlemen. I was wondering how, out of all the princes and lords who participated in the First Crusade, why Godfrey de Bouillon was the one who became the advocate of the Holy Sepulchre, what would become the title of King of Jerusalem, and how he managed to defend this holding from the Islamic threat. With the permission of Mr. Vincent, the advocate of Tumbler House, Franchini, I'd be delighted if Charles would answer this question in as much detail as possible.
Oh, that's nice. We all have many wishes, and you're getting yours. Well, again, the last first. He was able to hold it off because they kept getting reinforcements and because the Muslim world was divided at that time. The Fatimids in Egypt were the arch enemies of the Muslims in Syria and Transjordan and so on. And the Crusaders both were gathering strength from reinforcements to the west and took advantage of the divisions in the Muslim ranks. As to why Godfrey de Bouillon was given the spot, it was partly because of his bravery and his men and all that, but because he really did epitomize what the Crusaders was all about. And they knew it, you know. Also, the ones who perhaps would have been most likely to dispute his position had already carved out fiefs for themselves. The Principality of Antioch, the County of Tripoli, the County of Edessa. So the more malcontented already had their piece of the pie. They didn't care. And the ones that continued on uh, almost venerated Godefroy as the epitome of what a crusader should be.
All right. The last few questions for this episode are going to come from Anthony.
Okay, Anthony. Does he work in a restaurant?
No, well, maybe he does. I don't know. Could be.
Is he saving his money for someday?
Sing that part again? I forgot how that goes.
Anthony works in a restaurant, saving his money for someday.
There you go. What's the next line?
Oh, golly. Mama Leone said. I forget.
Okay. Anyhow. Anthony, who we prayed for his dad last week.
Yeah.
He asked, can you explain the sacraments of the sick and explain their importance? Holy Viaticum, extreme unction, the last blessing, preparation for death, prayer for those in their last agony, or the recommendation of a departing soul, and prayers after death. The reason I'm asking is because I just discovered these prayers in a traditional missal. They are beautiful prayers. Previously, I only heard of anointing of the sick or last rites.
Well, these prayers, I've used them at deathbeds, and they from a missal. Again, I tend to have this habit of answering the last question first, but these are all intended to help the dying or the recently dead soul on its way. Remember that the point of death, the devil goes after the individual very, very strongly. That's why we pray to Our Lady, pray for us now and at the hour of our death, because the disposition you're in at the moment of death is where you'll be for all eternity. So the dying individual needs all the help they can get. And that's why we have these prayers, to help them. The Viaticum is the last communion that one has. And it's literally taken on the way. It's to help you on your way into the next life, into the judgment and so on. And obviously, if you die with that kind of grace in your soul, you're escaping hell all the like there. Now, the sacrament of extreme unction, the anointing of the sick, call it what you like, it's really very important, as in the story that we opened tonight with. It absolves all your sins. They're all gone, even if you don't make a confession. It provides you with a lot of spiritual healing. Sometimes it does bring about miraculous physical healing. It's been known to happen. One of the tensions, you might say, is whether it was purely for the dying or it could be used for anyone who is ill, seriously ill. Amongst both the Eastern rites and a long time ago in the Western rites, it was for all the seriously sick. In the West, it became more and more a matter of the last sacraments, hence the extreme unction. After the council, there was a big thing about just calling it the sacrament of the sick or the anointing of the sick, and once again making it whether you were, seriously ill. But it is a very essential thing, and we should all of us pray very hard that we do not die without it.
I think devotion to Saint Joseph doesn't explicitly say that, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, right? I thought one of the promises is that you will not have an unprovided death. If I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah.
And Saint Joseph is one of the patrons of the dying, as is Saint Michael.
Yeah. One little question on this. I've always wondered about the naming of extreme unction. What is behind that name, extreme unction?
Extreme meaning at the end.
Oh. Okay. And what is unction?
It's oil.
I see. So
it's anointing.
Oil at the end. I see. Okay. Um, a couple more questions relating to this. Traditionally, how often can a priest give this sacrament if someone is extremely sick over several years?
Quite a bit. I mean, if you're sick over several years, especially if it's severe, you could go at any time. So there's no real limit.
Yeah. Um, I've known a bunch of people that have gotten it several times, including my dad. It
No,
seems to be a good practice. I mean, I don't feel like I don't feel like that's a sacrament to be stingy on. You know.
no. I mean, I've had it several times myself. And in my mother's last illness, the 8 months that we fought, you know, she had it done 3 times.
Hmm.
Twice in the traditional manner, once in the revised manner. The last time, the first 2 times, she was unconscious, and you don't have to be conscious to receive it, but she was unconscious. The third time, which was the day before she died, it was in the traditional manner, and she mouthed the responses in Latin, which is something to behold. You know, she knew what was going on.
Yeah. How did the sacrament change after Vatican II?
Well, that was it. Well, first, several ways. Firstly, they changed the emphasis from uh, the last rites to doing it, for any serious illness. They also simplified it tremendously, and the anointings, which in the traditional rite, I mean, the forehead, the eyes, the nose, lips, the ears, the chest, the back of the hands, and the back of the feet, basically sealing off the entire body for God. Now they only do a few of those, um, and so of course it's a much shorter sacrament than it was. So that's been the biggest difference. But the core remains the anointing and the prayers, the essential prayers. Interesting enough, there used to be, before the council, they had what was called the sick kit that every family had. But this was often in the shape of a crucifix, but it opened up and it would have holy water, holy oil, a couple of candles, some other things in it, a relic. And if the priest came to see anyone in the house, you would basically open it up so you could use it. Now, every priest, and this is something too, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make a particular point of. Earlier on, earlier on this evening, I said how for a lot of my people, my generation, you kids would be the only reason we would get the sacraments because, certainly wouldn't do it of our own volition. Um, I also want to say a quick word to any priests who are listening, or anyone who knows priests and could pass on my suggestion. You never know when you're going to run into somebody who needs the sacraments, especially of the dying. You have no idea when it'll happen. And so I would recommend highly, Reverend Fathers, that you've got the sick kit in the car, and that if you have access to it whenever you go anywhere. Reason being that you don't know. And I know 2 particular cases. My confessor, Cardinal McIntyre, in the 40s when he was an auxiliary bishop in New York, he always used to take a walk around Manhattan. One day, spur of the moment, he's about to take his walk and he just grabbed his sick kit. He didn't even know why he did it, but he did. He's walking, and just then a plane slams into the Empire State Building. And before you knew it, he was surrounded by the dead and dying. And he used that sick kit that day. He never forgot it. And so he never went out in the car again without having the sick kit with him. And every now and then there'd be a reason for it. The other was about, no, this happened 4 years ago, I guess, or 5. But 6 or 7 years ago, when I was staying in Litchfield, Connecticut, the beautiful Litchfield Hills, attempted to co-write a book with a fellow who, sadly, we didn't finish it. His health went downhill. But while I was there, I introduced him to the local priest, Father Tucker. Now, my friend Jim, great guy, humanly speaking, great pal of mine, but no faith. He was a fallen away Catholic, about as fallen as you're going to get. Well, nevertheless, I introduced him to Father Tucker, that being the name of the priest there in Litchfield. And, that was that. It was obvious that he wasn't going to be able to continue, and my time in Litchfield was up, so I went back home. A year or two later, I don't know if Jim had a heart attack and rolled down the stairs into the street, or rolled down the stairs into the street and had a heart attack. I don't think anybody knows. But whichever it was, the door of the building he was in flies open. He rolls out onto the street, slam, right in front of Father Tucker, who, like Cardinal McIntyre decades before, had just happened, for no particular reason, to grab his sick kid as he was on his way out. And because I had introduced him to Jim, he knew who he was. He recognized him and knew that he was some sort of a Catholic. And so he anointed him, and he died right in front of him, right there. And it made a big impression on Father Tucker, I can tell you. So this is important stuff. We've only got the one life to live. We've got to stop living as though we believe in reincarnation. We've got to start living as though we believe this really is the one life to live that we got. And the way we do that, of course, is by doing our best to help those who are leaving leave it as well as they can. There was another point I wanted to make, which is fast eluding me. Oh, I remember. Something else, and that is, don't be afraid to suggest to various people who have dying loved ones, if they've got any connection with the faith at all, and even if they don't, that they send for a priest. And they may or may not. People will surprise you. My brother, and I know I've said this before, but my brother, I guess 3 years or so ago, now time flies when you're alive, 4 years maybe. Anyway, his two best friends from school died within weeks of each other. And both unrelated causes. They both had cancer, and they were part of a group of 4 or 5 best friends. So these two died. And as it happened, both of them were not exactly fallen away, not exactly practicing, which is not uncommon in that generation. But their children and the wives were not Catholic to any real degree at all. In both cases, it was my brother that suggested and convinced them to get the last rites. And both times, both guys were very happy to get them, even though they would never have thought of asking for them. And their spouses or children would never have dreamed of going for them. And because their particular demises were, shall we say, in the one case, the guy was cremated and scattered at sea. In the other, he frankly was allowed to die of dehydration. I mean, he was dying of cancer. He would have died sooner or later anyway. But he died of dehydration. It wasn't the cancer that killed him. They're very typical. Because of that, my brother was blaming himself for not doing more in both cases. And this is both at the same time. And I said, look, what are you talking about? If you hadn't gotten him the last rites, it would never have happened. And I mean, it's a pity that the one died that way and the other had his ashes scattered. But you had no control over that. You did better for them than their families did. You have nothing, and I mean nothing, to feel bad about. So he cheered up a little bit, I guess. But I say this because be ready to swoop in, Never presume, never assume. The same, incidentally, is true if you've got friends with children who are in danger of death. suggests baptism. Don't be afraid. Because, you've only got the one time.
Yeah.
You only got the one time. And then it's over. So don't... this is precisely where we shouldn't feel human respect. This is where the pedal hits the metal.
All right, Charles. Okay, well, that's it for the questions. We do have a book of the week, I'm happy to say.
That's a book of the week club. What do we got?
The Quest for Happiness, Finding the Meaning of Life Within God's Plan by Venerable Louis of Granada. So, this is published by Tan Books. Going through it very carefully, I noticed that edited and arranged by Ryan Grant.
Oh,
Very
we know Ryan.
Very sneaky. He did not... You have to look hard, but... Not gonna get that past me, Ryan. So this is a compilation of writings that Ryan put together from Louis of Granada, and I feel like it was very expertly arranged. And this book appealed to me because I feel this question or this approach is a good possibility for evangelization, because life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the last being what everyone is trying to do all the time, right? And so this is sort of the Catholic approach to that. And basically, I mean, you have chapters such as the false happiness of this world, true happiness, living a life of virtue, the gifts of the Holy Spirit, venial and mortal sin, the slavery of sin, and so all this good stuff, divine grace. I'm almost finished with it, and it's really been a wonderful read. It must have been a great translation, because it's really smooth. It's a lot smoother than it's a lot easier to read than Teresa of Avila or St. John of the Cross, at least for me. I really like the style, Venerable Louis's style of writing. So, long story short, we are made for God. That is our end. And so, therefore, that's where happiness is to be got. Is that true, Charles? Yeah.
I mean, there's no, neither salvation nor happiness can be found apart from God. I mean, there's just... And the thing is, again, you realize this the older you get, is how fleeting this world is and how empty its promises are. You don't really realize that when you're young, and nor should you in a certain sense.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I don't think even when you're young you should put your hope in the promises of this world. That's not my point. But when you're young, everything is new. And the world seems very wonderful and exciting, as it should. But as you get older, its limitations become more and more intolerable. The world is enough when you're 25. It's not enough when you're 60. It's not that it's bad. It's that it's just not sufficient. And you realize that it passes away very, very quickly. And you also realize, if you've tried to respond to God's promptings, you'll realize how much worse you would be were it not for Him. And
even with the sufferings and difficulties, might I add, especially in my own personal life, you see what blooms from that. It's really something.
It can be really, really tremendous stuff. And of course, the other thing too is that very often what we don't get, especially in our younger life, that we really want, really wouldn't be good for us if we did get it.
I was actually just thinking about this yesterday, that the curse of this modern world is that we've literally gotten everything that we wanted.
And much good has it done us. And I mean, I have to say that I've known people, both writers and actors and so on, to whom success came early. Then what? So the moral of that story, ladies and gentlemen, is orient yourself. The more you can orient yourself to God, the happier you're going to be in this life, and the happier in the next.
Is there anything you can tell us about Venerable Lewis? We also sell another one of his books that I'm eager to read as well, The Sinner's Guide, which I think Tan Books publishes it.
It does.
Yeah.
The Sinner's Guide is a real basic work of spirituality. Luis de Granada was living in the 1500s in Spain, Granada, oddly enough, Dominican, and he was very much prized by the Spanish royalty of the time. His advice was, but he was also his writings were treasured by a lot of people afterwards, like St. Francis de Sales, St. Vincent de Paul, and so forth. St. Francis de Sales was particularly fond of him. And insisted that newly appointed bishops should read his work. So he, very, very important individual and worth getting to know better. So.
Okay. Excellent plug, Charles. Well done.
I try to give service.
So.
And speaking of which, I have good news for you.
Okay.
You have been invited to a publishers convention.
Why am I hearing this from you? I'm scared now. I'm actually really scared because you're giving me an invitation to. How could you know such a thing? Okay, go on.
Because
go on.
I got it from Erwin Zucker at the the Book Publicists Association. Anyhow, this is going to be great for you. This is how it's a big seminar strictly for publishers on how publishers can reduce systemic racism in American society. What?
It's okay. I already know. You know how publishers can contribute by not publishing racist stuff. But what I find
there's much more than that. See, you're refusing to see the problem.
What's the All right. Go on. What's the problem, Charles?
How many books about anti-racism have you personally published that were written by white women?
How many books on anti-racism were published by white women?
Yeah, because see, anti-racism books.
Yeah, it's, 3. 3. Are they dedicated to it? No, but there's a line or two. It's not ignored.
Oh gosh, you got me there. I guess you're. You know what? You are now officially able to put the little blue eagle, the little NRA blue eagle on everything that's put out from Tumblr House. We do our part. Yes, you're doing your part to fight systemic racism in America by publishing Solange Hits.
Oh no! So there's like an actual certification?
Well, not yet, but as I say, you could use the little NRA Blue Eagle from Roosevelt's time because the motto, we do our part.
No, okay, I'm glad.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I'm glad. Now, what are you going to do? What are you going to do in terms of rights for igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic Americans?
Well, I'm willing to publish any books that they write.
Are you willing to open up employment opportunities for them?
My door is open.
So you're not going to turn down applicants just because they're rocks.
That's right. All they have
You'll
to do
find
is
other
walk
reasons. Yeah, walk in the door and they'll get a fair hearing. All right, I want you to remember this one thing, though.
All right.
Justice for non-aspirating Americans. All right.
All right, Charles. So, I have a question
Yeah.
for you.
Okay, what's that?
If it's Monday, what is it?
I can do this. It's off the menu.
But wait, what about the soul you save?
Chances are, within the parameters of post-structuralist discourse, that it's the soul you save that is your own.
Good enough, Charles.
God bless all. Good night. See you next week.